Hello, hello. Welcome to the Creativity Question, the podcast for all humans who are eager to know more about creativity, what it is, what it means, and how people use it. I am over the moon today with today's guest because I've known her for 18 years, which is so crazy because we are 18. She is a multidisciplinary, sorry, multidisciplinary, oh my God, this is an hard word, multidisciplinary creative director with nearly 2 decades of experience working across the UK, US, and Canada, shaping global fashion and digital campaigns. She started her career at net where early exposure to e-commerce and digital storytelling shaped how she thinks about brands. And since then, she's worked at the intersection of creativity and technology, working on shoots with supermodels, building complex digital ecosystem, co-founding an AI company, and pushing visual storytelling forward. She is known for her sharp eye and a system level way of thinking with a 360 degrees approach that balances concept, craft, and execution. Outside her work, she's a mom, a dog lover, which I deeply share, and someone who values a good conversation and a proper martini. And she says, I believe great creativity comes from looking beyond the lens, creating unexpected connection, merging worlds, and finding a clear voice in the noise. She is the fabulous Caroline Nitsch. Welcome, Caroline. So good
Thank
to
you.
have you here.
Happy to be here.
So, you know that we always start with the same first core question. And the first core question of this podcast is, Caroline, what does creativity mean to you?
Yeah, this is an incredible question. So I think for me, creativity touches every aspect of my life. I think I'm very privileged to work in a creative field where I can dream up scenarios that I get to execute on, in terms of fashion campaigns and photo shoots, and even websites. I think can be incredibly creative and rewarding. Um, I think creativity also, though, is how I process difficult times in my life, how I process things in general. It's part of my everyday philosophy where I feel like everyday life should be special. It's something that's very dear to me. Otherwise, why are we here? And it's how I've created my home. It's how I interact with my daughter. I think my daughter's re-sparked a whole creativity in me to go back to the world of play and to dream up certain scenarios. And obviously, she's going to eventually have homework that requires creativity and going back to the very beginning. So I think that moments have shaped and changed me. I have always had creativity as a catalyst, I would say. And creativity shapes how I see the world and also how I escape it, which is very much in the form of books or movies or things like that. It's how I show love. It's how I experience life. So I feel like it's very much woven into the fabric of me and me as a person and my life.
Testify that that is actually how you are. This is a question that would come later in my list of questions, but because you mentioned it, I think it's appropriate to ask you, what are if you can list a few sources of influence, some things that really you influenced you to choose your career?
To choose my career, well, that's one influence. My brother influenced me to choose my career, I think, which is funny
It's
because
important.
I think it's just one of those things where, an outsider looking in, just being very observant over someone that he lived with and saying, "I think you'd be good at graphic design. You're really interested in art." And I was like, since I was a preteen, I was collecting magazine tears in a folder for no reason, like, not really understanding what I was gonna do with them, but I just knew that I liked them, and so I wanted to have them around. But, I think, it's a different sort of facet than what actually influences me day to day, but yeah, that's what influenced me to go about
It
my
was
career.
your brother.
Yeah, it was my brother. Yeah,
That's
I've
great.
always idolized my brother for sure. And
That's great.
Yeah, I think both of us have always been creatively, moved by creativity, which has been a very different experience from our engineering parents. So I think when we were encouraged to go into math and science, I think both of us were more interested in music and, imagery and movies and things like that.
That's so cool. I have this in common with you because I was just chatting to my dad yesterday and I was telling him, I think that it's because of you that I always felt attracted to creativity and this world that seemed so far away, but then it is not really. Um, right. So tell me about you work in fashion, right?
Mhm.
Mainly in fashion.
Yeah.
Tell me about a moment of breakthrough when you saw a project and you thought, I know exactly what to do with this. And did it actually happen to you? Or is it always a slower process when you get an idea?
I think in terms of a breakthrough, when I was faced with a challenge, there's always a situation that comes back to me that I'm fond of because it was in the middle, like what I'd say now, the middle of my career. It's when I was at Canada Goose, so about 10 years ago. I had concepted a shoot where we wanted to be in studio with a dark background. We had brought in a ton of sand for the set. And so they were like huge hills of sand that were supposed to represent snow because we're selling winter jackets. And so we started to shoot and it wasn't looking like the references, it wasn't feeling right, like, there was something that was just off about, having the vision come to life, but the sand had been delivered on this, skip, on this big metal box that was all beat up, and it had rust in it, and it was just filled with sand, it looked like dunes, and then, on top of it was this, see-through tarp, and it was a really windy day, and the tarp was just, like, flapping outside in the wind, and it just looked like a snowstorm, and so all of us, on set were just looking at it like, that would actually be the perfect place to have the setting for these shots. Um, and it was a decision, I think if it were early on in my career, I don't know if I'd have the courage to try to push to completely pivot, because as an art director, you try to prepare as much as possible for the moment that you're going into. But we got the model and we put her in this box and, we took a couple of test shots and sent it to the C-suite immediately saying, "We have this idea, but we'd have to change concept ASAP." They approved it. The rest of the shoot was out there, and I think that was, like it was a courageous moment for me where I had to have the confidence to make that call. And the team felt very supported. I think, I'm known for my calm and collected demeanor, so even if I'm freaking out on the inside going, "What the heck can I do to actually make this shoot work?" The team felt supported and felt like we were going in a good direction, and we got the approval pretty quickly, and I still to this day love those shots.
Oh, that's such a great story. Would you suggest to someone who's just starting out to risk something like that? Or would you say just wait for, to have a little bit more experience to do something like that?
No, not at all. I think yeah, it's I think your instinct is the most powerful tool that you have because everyone, no matter where they are in their career, has that instinct. And I think the experience, of course, will be able to gauge the feasibility of the instinct and the practical nature of it. But I think the instinct is part of your creative intuition. And that's something that I think everyone should always listen to and trust, even if there's someone who's just started out just out of uni, an intern or something like that, if they have an instinct and they share it, it could be the way that we go. Like, that doesn't necessarily need to be driven by experience.
100%. It's famously known that the inventor of Spotify rap was an intern. So, so you see, sometimes you don't need years of experience. Sometimes you just have a good idea. That's a very nice thing to say to younger
Mm.
entrepreneurs or designers or whoever is starting up now. Equally, I usually ask our guests, what was a moment of struggle in your career? And, how did you overcome it? Did you feel really stuck? And how did you manage?
I think, it doesn't for me come down to necessarily one moment. I think the times that I'm stuck are when I'm asked to produce something that I know doesn't make sense. Either it's not right for the brand or it doesn't actually solve the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think that that just requires a sort of a conversation, but sometimes I think you're in a situation where you just have to execute on what the client wants. So I guess in a moment of struggle, it's also about learning to let go of your ego because sometimes work is just work and it's not necessarily about the creativity and it's about the client getting exactly what they asked for. And even though you might not believe in it, you've done it and you've delivered it. And, some for the money, some for the glory. But I think those are the moments of struggle. And I think as a creative, sometimes the struggle does come with, going along with something that you don't necessarily think is the right thing to do. But I think the more that you have experience, the more you're able to articulate why and ladder it up to business decisions and ladder it up to whether or not it actually represents the brand going forward. So I think the big lesson there is like the why. Why are you doing something? And does that thing make sense to do?
That's a very good lesson as well to learn. That is true. Sometimes you have to compromise, and
Yeah.
it's not always about us. I think creatives also struggle, especially. I don't want to generalize, but especially when we are younger, it's really hard to let go of what we strongly believe. But you're right. Sometimes it just has to answer the brief. Sometimes it can be something you don't share completely, but if you answer the briefs, it does. So
Mhm,
there you
mhm.
go. And thank you for this, Karen. Tell us about a little bit about your creative process. How do you get your ideas? How do you have tools that you use? Do you have habits that you formed to, get into your creative state?
I think I always like to start with, well, first of all, the why, but then I really like to bring two opposing things together that seemingly don't necessarily feel like they should be together. And I think that's when you get something that makes you feel something. Um, it's a juxtaposition that's unexpected. So I try to look around for that, whether something's obvious, but also I've been lucky enough to start at Net-a-Porter when I think they were such a pioneer of the field that I'm in, and so the field of reference was really infinite. Like, they would take us to gallery shows, we would go to creative talks, we had a library that was built in the office, so we had, I think it was about 100 Years of Vogue issues that my former boss got on eBay that we could flick through, but also, anytime we wanted to buy a book, whether it had to do with typography, whether it had to do with fashion, whether it had to do with art, we were able to do that, and so it was very easy for us to say at that, point that we needed to, like, leave the office or go outside to be able to get inspiration and to think about things, and I think to have that as a first job was unlike most other experiences that I've had. So every other place that I've gone to, it's all about mimicking or having points of reference that are very much in the field that you're in. And I don't think that that's necessarily my process. I think my process is to really go back to my former self, my, like, preteen self, and figure out what creates those emotional ties, because I think there's a similarity in that for a lot of people. There's, like, a red thread of experience and emotion for a lot of people, and I think that's what you're trying to bring to a brand. Anytime I've been praised for having a great idea. I think the creativity and, like, the process has always come from a wider field of research and inspiration rather than looking into comparison. And so that's what I love to do. I love to be tactile. Like, I love, in the pandemic, I learned how to sew, and I feel like, even in the course that we actually did together, there was bookbinding, there was letterpress, there was things that are not necessarily practical to what we do every day, but I think it's just the understanding of how those things are created that always, like, fulfills me and makes me think back to origin stories, or I think that's how you create those juxtapositions, but then, in the same right, I've also founded this AI company, and so through that, I've always been interested in technology. I worked for Google DeepMind in 2014 before this whole blow up of AI, and I think it's really interesting. Obviously, it's really scary, but I feel like I need to be on top of how this is gonna affect my industry. I think being a part of this company has also made me really have to heavily research what's out there and what's possible, even though what's possible is changing on, like, an hourly basis. But I think it's also, new tools come out all the time, and how those tools impact your work is really interesting, and the problems that it creates, or the frustrations that it creates, or the benefits that it creates are really interesting. I think now everyone's seeing through the AI slop of copywriting, of this, like, absolute rainbow of things that comes out of the
Yeah.
wording for an Instagram caption where you're just like, when were the days where we just said about 3 words and that was it?"
Yeah.
So yeah, if that answers the question, I think there's a lot in the process, but I think it's just really trying to, like, get down to the roots of things.
That's really interesting. May I ask you a couple of questions
Mhm.
related specifically to what you do? One is, what do you love about fashion?
Mm. So much, so much. I think it's like,
You can say everything. That's absolutely fine.
I love on an individual basis how we can express ourselves. I love, like, being around just ordinary people who are so incredibly creative with what they put on themselves that they almost become characters. It's that whole notion, I think, that you're trying to make life as special as possible instead of just living in the rat race. And I think I've always been drawn to someone that will take a chance, for the sake of, like, brightening up the world a little bit, and I think that's what fashion can do. I mean, it's like, I think what's come out of human beings who have designed things for runway shows has been extraordinary, from, the days of McQueen and Westwood. And I think we're having a bit of a resurgence now with the amount of creativity. I think everyone's kinda done with the minimalist, I love minimalism. I love impeccable tailoring, but I also love, like, creating an absolutely magical world. I've always been influenced by books and movies and things like that, and if, like, the movies that I've been drawn to for visual reasons have been, like, The Cell or What Dreams May Come, where you are creating total worlds, and a lot of that definitely has to do with fashion, but even, I'm Canadian, and I'm very proud of heated rivalry coming out into the world. That
My
there's
God,
something
I so have to watch that. I've heard so
Oh my
many
god, really?
amazing things about
Yeah,
it. Yes.
that's
Yeah,
been
will do, will
I've
do.
I've I'm fully in the psychosis. I've watched it probably 6 times already, but even, like, the subtlety of the costuming that they have in there to denote, what a Russian immigrant would be wearing in the early 2000s, and, what does, like, a jock wear in Montreal at this time, and, when you get it spot on, it really impacts the way that you feel in a setting, in a storytelling situation, and I think a lot of fashion is storytelling. Having to work with founders and being able to hear why they do things, and, where their vision comes from. It could be anything from, wanting to empower women after a really difficult time in their life, to, like, having these dreams that you can't get out of your head unless you actually make them real, and not only painting them, but actually having them be worn. I love going to museums where they're showing old collection, or, like, a lifetime collection of a designer. I think it's absolutely stunning and beautiful. Like, the things that we can put on our body are just wonderful. We can sparkle if we want to. We can blend into the
Yeah.
background if we want to. It's just it's a reflection of your mood. It's a reflection of
Yes.
how you wanna feel, so there's a lot that I love about it.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. And
Yeah,
the second
my
question
daughter,
was
my daughter's gotten into fashion now too, in a way. In a way, she's all about Disney princess dresses, and she
obviously.
dresses herself now, and it's all unicorns and rainbows, but, like, I love it. I love the way she puts outfits together. She paired, a navy pair of leggings with unicorns all over them with a navy top with a glittery unicorn on it, and I thought, "Oh, you're coordinating your unicorns. That's so incredible that you're just like even a four-year-old is so creative with what they wear."
Like mother, like daughter.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's fantastic. I remember my mom used to buy t-shirts and then buy me the same t-shirt, like a mini version of the stuff she would, and we have photos with the same outfit.
Oh.
That was so sweet. Um, anyway, I digress. The second question was, and what is it possible with AI in fashion? Is there something that is really, relevant at the moment that you think, is very much worth exploring?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I've been through a lot of evolutional waves of technology, even with digital, with e-commerce and stuff like that. I remember going through, how to put editorial content online, and it was like Java, then it was Flash, then it was, however you're gonna code it is dependent on how you could actually show it and receive it and things like that. And I think that's what we're coming to. I think when I first started, it was going from film to digital. And then there was the rise of social media where then you had to shoot double, then triple, then quadruple, like, the amount of assets just kept going up, 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 up. So, I think it's valuable for me to come at it from that point of view where the jobs used to be very different just as they're evolving now, and we always adapt, and we adapt to our needs, but there's a lot of content that is strictly for commerce that's all about just accurately showcasing what products look like, and I think if we can automatically generate those, then we're kinda going back in time to when we could just focus on campaigns being strictly creative, and you can test ideas out, or you can shoot things, and you can add otherworldly aspects to them, just like you would probably layer collages or use artwork or illustration to be able to take that image and put it into a different space. So I think we're gonna have people using these tools in a really creative way. There's a lot of like accuracy that's happening, which is exciting. And I think my goal would be to automate some of the things that feel overwhelming because I think over the course of the past 10 years, burnout has become very, very normal, and we're evolving how we work internally or externally, now remotely, but it just feels like there's always expectations, and you're always meant to be, absorbing content and looking around and seeing what's going on. Things are evolving really quickly. It's less about, trends that are decided by forecasters or fashion associations. We're going back to nostalgia and, the vintage is becoming really popular. So the world is evolving, and I think we'll evolve with AI in terms of, I guess, whatever these needs are that creatives are kind of doing for very little pay right now. I think the economy has shifted, so people are compromising their salaries. And hopefully, if we can do this a little bit quicker and more efficiently, then we can have a slower pace of life and actually be valued for the contributions that we're making and in a way that makes like sense for us physically and mentally. So, I mean, that's a very utopian take on things, but that's my hope. That's my hope, and I like, run this company with some really wonderful people, and we wanna include the industry, and we want the feedback of the industry, and we wanna hire the industry as much as we can so that we can we can take the experience and expertise of people that have been doing this for so long and help ease the burden of the machine so that people can create.
I love everything you just said. I think
Thank
it's
you.
so important to use technology as well to improve our lives because it's something that people are not talking about enough, I
Mhm,
feel. Whereas, yeah, there's obviously the productivity side, which is great. We can make a lot more with less time in less time. But also, as you said, we also need to find a balance between life and work, which has been really, really tough for the past decade or two, because everything has been accelerating so much that
mhm.
I mean, the burnout culture is something we are all sadly very aware of. So I really think you said something very valuable there. You basically answered the next question, but it's so interesting talking to you that I also already have another question.
Yeah.
I would like to know because you have such a wide experience, and I know you personally as well, so I know a lot of your work as well. Who can I ask you, who was your favorite person to work with in terms of models or celebrity or even someone who wasn't famous? It doesn't have to be someone famous, but someone who
Mhm.
really made you feel really fulfilled and that you were doing an amazing job and it was just, one of the happiest moments you had at work, if there
Oh,
is one.
I mean, there's so many for different types of reasons. I think, I've worked with some amazing people, Christy Turlington, Helena Christensen. For me, Jessica Stam was one of my top models when I first started out, and I got to work with her this summer, and she's Canadian. She's lovely. She's so sweet, and it was, like, such a beautiful, wonderful thing to do. I am blessed to work with my partner, Irina Lazaranu, who was a supermodel in the early 2000s, and so I looked up to her, and I remember being at Net-a-Porter, cutting out pictures of her on the computer and putting her into the editorial spreads. Um, in terms of fulfillment, I think, I worked with Mo White for a little bit, who was a creative director at The Outnet and Net-a-Porter, and she took me along to a bunch of freelance ventures that we did together. One was Google DeepMind, which I think just working with all of the, MIT educated scientists and like a completely different workspace of like really interesting people was such a blessing. And when they got purchased by Google, that was for us really um, humbling as to the work we were doing. But then we also went to Condé Nast and we were building out their e-commerce platform where we were turning style.com into an e-com venture. So that was insane. I mean, going to the Condé Nast building
Mhm.
in London and feeling like, I think the Devil Wears Prada had already been out, and I'm just thinking, like, of all the cliché things that we're expecting, and, yeah, that was surreal, but then also I think, I worked on this perfume brand last year called Manuel Mathieu, and so he's a Montreal artist, he's a painter and a sculptor, and he decided that he was gonna create fragrances, so he created 3 fragrances with the, Nose, who is at Hermès and YSL and, like, a lot of, has impacted a lot of the fragrance industry luxury-wise, and that was a blessing because that was just very much like working with an artist just feels like a back and forth that's, unreal, like, any kind of thoughts or ideas that I had, he instead of just considering it, he pushed them, and so we could riff back and forth on creating this world that you've got fragrance where you can't necessarily, I mean, unless you're literally taking a picture of, like, jasmine and tobacco and all the things that go into the thing, which is, like, just so expected. We were just creating worlds out of stories that he had in his head of, like, the influence of being, Haitian and an artist and very much, like, wanting to empower women, and so he had a sister in the campaign, and we were able to create, just something so beautiful, like, we had a candle that was made out of the perfume bottle shape with 3 wicks that we laid out a table filled with water, and we were lighting and taking pictures on various different moments of it melting. Um, I had this idea where I wanted a giant appendage, like, I really wanted to either have, like, a giant nose or a giant head or something like that, and he was like, "What about a giant hand, and we can have all the perfumes on it, and I'm holding it, and it's, like, the size of him," and he got that made, and that was just wonderful and excellent to like, it's usually you're so focused on commerce, and there's always an element of creativity where people appreciate beauty and they appreciate the setting that you're trying to create for them, but I think for him, it was just so much more, unexpected, and from the depths of your brain where the cobwebs are, you're just like, "What about this?" And it gets accepted and part of the visuals, and so I think that's something that I think I'll always be proud of being a part of, and that was just like, from talking typography with him and, discussing why this font has beautiful ease, and he listens with a sort of,
The dream, a graphic
yeah,
designer dream.
like a respect and what's the word I'm thinking of? Like an, intuition between each other. There's like a kindred
Kindred
talk,
spirits.
just like completely different things where for him it's in his mind in a different way, but for me there's like a commerce element of it, and so I think that was beautiful, and I did the website and the branding and the packaging, and so that was a really incredible.
That sounds beautiful. I really want to see it.
Yeah,
It
I'll send it.
sounds, yes, yes, please send it to us because I also have the page, the website associated to the podcast so people can look at your
Oh,
everything you want to share. That's fantastic. It sounds like a really creative, like purely creative job. So that's what
in
I
that
think is
project, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like, the dream of that all of us have, to have a client that is actually more concentrated on the idea
Mhm.
than the commercial outcome, which is very
Yes, it is.
and tell me, Caroline, is your idea of creativity changed over the years? The way you think about creativity?
Think I think not. I don't think that it has. I feel like the older I get, the closer I get to this sort of, idealistic way that I was in childhood or when I was younger. I feel that it's coming back for full circle to more of a purity. And so for me, it's about special moment and vivid feelings, feeling the same amount of intensity as I did when I was experiencing things for the first time. So yeah, I feel like a little bit more free. Maybe there was a lot of rigidity when I was going up in my career, but now it just feels like I'm trying to go back to the root and in my life and in my work, I think during the pandemic, my husband Mark and I, we did like weekly dinners where we would swap who was responsible for them, and we would turn our living room as surprises into like Italy or Mexico, or there was a time where he brought in bags of sand that he poured into the living room, and we watched we watched Castaway, and he made like coconut shrimp, and we would get dressed up and do stupid things like that. Yeah, Twin Peaks
Don't I
Diner.
love this? This is great.
And I think that's the type of stuff that I'm going back to. That was before Nova was even born. But I think with Nova, it just really brings me back to, like, trying to make her life special, trying to make her childhood special, and there's a lot of creativity in that. I want her to try to express herself because I can already see she's creatively inclined, like, she loves to dance, and she loves film, and she loves words and letters and, yeah, making up stories. So I think that's really nice. I remember being a kid and having my mom take wildflowers and make flower crowns, and so those are moments for me that feel super special, and I think that's my that's sort of where my creativity is gravitating towards is, like, beauty and love and things like that, where maybe there was a period of time where I would have tried to express more negative emotions or work through more negative emotions. I feel like I've come to the other side where I feel way more peaceful, and so it's about finding joy, and that gives me balance.
That sounds lovely. I think your daughter definitely has given you a sense of, um, I don't know, delight that I
Mhm.
think we all have in our childhood, but then it kind of disappears because we just lose it. I feel the same. I feel like the older I get, the more joyful I feel. Not joyful, but I appreciate things more and I
Mhm.
see beautiful things more. Do you do something like, because I remember my parents when I was a child, they gave me very generously a wall that I could paint on.
Really?
Yes, and then we would paint it
Amazing.
in white again. But then I had the responsibility every summer to paint it white again and clean it. And do you do something like that with Nova, or and also, what do you see her doing? Do you have any idea what she might be when she grows up?
No, I can't say that I no. I mean, right now, they did, we had, preschool graduation, and so they did this movie of all the kids saying out loud what they wanted to be when they grow up, and, she said ballerina, and it was very cute. She was the only one that said ballerina, so I don't know. I mean, I truly don't know. She could end up being, like, really into accounting at some point. I yeah, maybe she'll wanna be a lawyer. Like, I wanna let go of any preconceived notions of that, but right now we just wanna foster whatever she wants to do within reason, and, we basically have, like, this roll of craft paper that you get from IKEA with the easel, but we don't use the easel, we just, like, roll it out on the ground, and then she'll just draw on that, and so we like doing that with her, and, yeah, sometimes it's fine to get messy, but it really is exhausting to clean that much. It's nice to do in the yard when it's the summertime where she can be head to toe covered in mud or whatever it is she wants to do, and then we can hose her off. But no, I never had that as a kid. That sounds really cool. I did, when I was, like, 19, 20 years old, I ended up, doing a job with the city to d paint murals. And so I did that for a couple of summers, and I don't think there's any left in the city, but it was really fun to learn how to airbrush and how to spray paint, and we would either get, like, commissions by the city of we got, like, a tunnel between 2 subway stations that we got to paint with, like, you know, portraits of the community and things like that, so that was really cool. I feel like that was my way to do something like that, be completely messy and draw outdoors.
That's brilliant. Yes. Well, I mean, it sounds like your daughter is really giving you lots of ideas. At the very least, lots of, joyful feelings, which is already very important for us as creatives, I think. So, what's your advice for young people who are starting up now? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think, just based on working with some younger people and seeing how terrified they are of entering the workforce and how to get the opportunities they want to get. So I would definitely just say, like, don't be afraid to ask to be in the environments that you are looking to be in. You can cold call, you can try to get an internship, like, just ask for the opportunities you're looking for, and my whole career started when I guessed the email address of a creative director of my favorite magazine in London, and they were just 2 girls who worked out of an apartment, so they basically said, "We can't legally hire you to do anything, but we freelance at Elle en Vogue," and so they got me an internship at Elle, and that's where I met Joe Baldwin, who ended up going to Net-a-Porter as an art director, and yeah, um, Becky Smith, who was the woman I contacted, she was like, "I admire your persistence in trying to work with us," and we've been in touch ever since. Like, I think that was, like, a life lesson for me where I asked for what I wanted, and, people are a lot nicer than you think they are, and sometimes they're not, but a lot of the time they are. more advice would be, like, be kind. No one likes an asshole, and do more than what's expected, pay your dues, work hard, trust your instincts. Um, and if you wanna get into art direction, then reach out to teams of your caliber or even more senior. If you have an idea, creatives are always welcome. You can contact modeling agencies and do shoots for free because creatives is how we gain experience, and not a lot of people know that. So, yeah, try to create the work that you wanna see and fail at it a lot so that you get the experience of where you need more help or resourcing. I think those are, like, really great moments of growth.
That's very good advice. So be bold. Be bold. Don't be afraid of
Yeah, just
asking.
try. Try, fall on your ass like it happens to all of us a million times, and, yeah, I know there are a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I've been trying to break into the fashion industry and I don't know how," and it's like, just keep reaching out to places no matter how much they're your style or not. As long as you start getting in, so much of the future relies on networking and connections that you make along the way. If you meet one person, then they'll go off to another company, and that's how it begins. So try not to settle for a path that you don't want, but if it so happens that that makes you happy, that's okay too.
That's great. And related to this, what you wish you'd known when you were very young, like 20 years ago,
God.
that you know
I don't think I would
now.
have listened to anything that anyone told me 20 years ago.
Fair
Like,
enough.
I think I got all the advice that I needed when I was that age, I just wasn't ready to hear it. I think, like, you're ready for it when you're at the point of growth and evolution, and so I think still, like, my biggest lesson is to trust your instincts about work, about people, just about life things, like, let things go. Um, the only way to find peace is through love, and that sounds like, a fortune cookie, but it's, like, a really hard lesson that took me a really long time to learn. And I think the biggest lesson that I feel like I've only just recently, aligned very closely with is that, you know, your values are extremely important, and if you're feeling lost, consistently aligning with your values can really ground you, even during challenging situations. If it's the hard choice that you have to make, it's hard to go through, but you will find a sense of peace so long as you're staying true to yourself. Um, and also there's, uh there's power and confidence in being introverted. I think for a really long time, I thought that the goal for me as an introvert was to become an extrovert or to seem like an extrovert, and, I kind of just felt like extroverts get all the success and recognition because that's what I saw around me, and I didn't realize my own power. I think there's an element of mystery with introverts where the less you say, the more people wanna know what you have to say, or the more people value what you say when you have something to say. So, I think that's cool, but I think, we were brought up in a corporate environment where people listen to the loudest person in the room, and that's really unfortunate, but, it doesn't have to be that way.
I agree with you. And I think that everyone should just be themselves, even if it sounds really cliche, but that's the truth. Because I am considered an extrovert in my personal life. But for instance, at work, I'm very introvert. So I'm never a person who shouts what she's done or how she's done it. And I work more hours and I work all the time and I never actually say it. But I think we have to just answer to ourselves. So I also think you're strong as you are. I think that there's nothing wrong about being an introvert. I actually find introvert people are very, very creative and very, very interesting because
Mhm,
then it takes longer to get to know them and they're profound. But really, everyone has something to give. So absolutely great advice. And yes, also be yourself. I think is always a good thing. Um, Right. So, Caroline, thank you so much. This was absolutely excellent. I want you to tell us where people can find you, your work, your books, websites, whatever you have done in your life. And then we'll obviously put it on the website as well.
Sure. So my body of work is on carolinenitsch.com. I've co-founded an AI company called Lookbook AI. I'm co-launching another venture very soon, so you can always follow me on Instagram to find out more about that. And I think that's pretty much it. I've written a few articles related to mental health, so I can pass those along to you. But otherwise, yeah, those are the main points.
Please do. Mental health is also something I would love to talk to, maybe in the next podcast. Also something I really would love to dig into. But for now, thank you so much for this. It was
Oh,
absolutely
you.
fantastic. And
You're a great interviewer.
please everyone find Caroline. Caroline is excellent. Her work is fantastic. And thank you so much. And see you soon.
Okay. Bye.